we are going to deal with the origin and definition of the coal. Okay. So, coal is commonly known as a fossil fuel. We all are aware of that. And it is sometimes also referred to as black diamond in common language, because it is very important source of energy, and India has huge reserves of coal. So we rely a lot on the coal deposits, coal as a fuel, and right from electricity generation to several other power plants for home consumption and then many other industries, coal is a very important source of energy. But how is coal defined? What is coal? Okay. What is the definition of coal in geological terms? So I hope you all are aware that the coal, it is formed from the fossilized material of plants. Now remember, when I say fossilized, it means I am not talking about the imprints of leaves. I am saying the plants, once they die and they get buried immediately under the sediment cover, they get protected from the atmospheric oxygen and bacterial activity. So this immediate burial of these plant material, the dead plant material, which gets protected from decomposition, it leads to the formation of coal. If you look at the structure of the coal, I am sure you all must have seen coal. You will find that if suppose that this is a coal sample, normally these coals, they are all stratified. They have this whole mass is composed of these several layers, individual layers, which are basically the dead plant material getting deposited one over the other in time, and then they get subjected to appropriate pressure and temperature, and then they get converted to coal. So basically here we are getting two things. When it is we say plant material, it means that it is organic material. And secondly, this layers, the layered structure of this coal, it gives impression that they have been deposited over each other, or the sedimentation has taken place. So if we combine these two information, that coal is composed of organic material and this organic material has been deposited in the form of sedimentation one over the other. So we can define the coal as an organo sedimentary rock. Organo sedimentary rock. So several people, you can confuse, is coal a mineral or is coal a rock? So I define coal as organo-sedimentary rock. I hope you understand this. All right. So moving ahead, the coal is defined as an organo-sedimentary rock which contains more than 50% organic matter. Organic matter. So if 50% is organic matter, what is the other 50%? These are basically the sediments or the other minerals which are present in the coal. Now, if this organic material is less than 50%, then what it can be called as? They may be referred to as organic shales. When the shaly material is more than 50% and organic material is less than 50%, then they may be referred to as organic shales, not coal. So please keep it in mind that coal is defined as an organo-sedimentary rock which contains more than 50% organic matter. And how is coal formed? It is the result of what? So the coal is a product of deposition. It is also a product of preservation, very, very important process. And coal is a product of conversion of dead vegetal material. Conversion of dead vegetal or dead plant material. Dead plant material. And what is the most important factor in converting this plant material in coal? It is the first one is the considerable or appropriate amount of time. If the material which is getting preserved gets exhumed soon, comes on the surface of the earth very soon, it will not form coal. After time, then pressure and temperature. These three are most important factors that lead to the formation of coal from dead plant material. So once the plant dies, it's it's this material gets preserved. It first gets buried, deposited, preserved, and then converted to coal. But for that, the duration of time should be sufficient. The pressure and temperature should be appropriate. The pressure and temperature, they are direct impact of the overburden, the sediments which are overlying the deposited organic material. The deposition of the, because as the sedimentary cover will go on getting thicker, the plant material will be under huge load, and that load will cause excess pressure and temperature. Okay. So I hope you all understand this. All right. Now, for the formation of the coal, there are several stages, because we all are aware that coal, it is of various types. So what are the different types of coals? We have coals, the most common classification. It is lignite, bituminous, and anthracite. Or this classification is based on the amount of carbon, the percentage of carbon present in the coal. But even how it will reach all these, stages, it all depends on the first stage of formation, and that is peat. So peat formation, it is the first stage of coalification. The process of formation of coal is known as coalification. Okay, so this coalification process, it is a very large and broad terminology. the coalification process. Now, how are these peats formed? Because this is the first stage of formation of the coal. So it is very important to understand how the peat is formed. So the peats are normally deposited in swamps or marshy areas, daldali zameen, marshy areas. Formation of peat requires anoxic environments. Very, very important factor. Anoxic environments. Anoxic means very, very less or no oxygen. Anoxic, absence of oxygen. So, oxygen, if present, will cause decomposition of the plant material. Therefore, anoxic environments are a must for the formation of the peat. And anoxic environments are very commonly found in swampy regions. So, let me tell you the reason why. Most of you must be knowing about the swamp, marshes, which we call in Hindi as daldal or daldali zameen. So in the marshy areas, what happens? Here, the water gets logged. Means there is no entry and exit of water. It is the whatever water goes inside gets logged over there. This water logging leads to very poor ventilation. When I say ventilation, it means that uh, the CO2 will be, it will be getting released, oxygen will be coming in. That is called as good ventilation. But once it is poor ventilation, then oxygen gets used up and then no new or no fresh oxygen comes in. This poor ventilation leads to the anoxic environment, and this anoxic environment, it protects plant material from decomposition. All right. Now, there are three main factors which lead to the formation of a peat swamp. Okay. Formation of peat swamp. There are three main factors. First one, evolutionary development of flora. Flora means plants. So we have to understand in which geological time what type of plants evolved, because we all are aware that the coal is entirely made up of plant material. So evolutionary development of flora is the first factor. Second factor is climate, of course, very, very important, because climate not only helps in the growth of plants, but climate also is important for the preservation of the dead organic material. And the third one is geographical and structural position of the region. Means where we are studying the peat swamp, that area, what was its geographical position, what was its tectonic evolution, and how did it evolve. Okay, so these are the three main factors that help in the formation of the peat swamp. So let us look at the first factor, the evolutionary development of flora. So if you look at this geological time scale, which deals about the higher plants, how did they evolve. So we'll talk from the lower Devonian, the early Devonian. Here, the early Devonian, it was very, you know, it is very important for the growth of submerged plants in shallow lagoons. So submerged plants over here. So these are the different types of uh, plants, the gymnosperms and angiosperms, and how did they evolve. But in Devonian, the xylophytes, Pilophytes, the early Devonian saw the growth of xylophytes. What are xylophytes? They are submerged plants, submerged in water, submerged, they were submerged in shallow lagoons. And these xylophytes, they gave rise to thin coal layers because they did not have any hard parts of the body as such, because they used to live submerged in the water. वो पानी में डूबे रहते थे वो plants, water hyacinth type के. तो ऐसे plants जिनके अंदर कोई hard stem नहीं था, they gave rise to fine or thin coal layers. Then the late early Devonian, where the first land plants evolved. So let me add a slide here. And we will keep going back to the previous picture. So early Devonian, it saw the growth of xylophytes, which were submerged plants in shallow lagoons. And these xylophytes, they gave rise to thin coal layers. Okay. Then late early Devonian, it saw the growth of first land plants. Then middle and late Devonian, the middle and late Devonian, they saw rapid spread of the land plants. Rapid spread of the land plants. So these land plants were the one which gave rise to the true coal seam. Okay, they gave rise to the true coal seams. Further, now after Devonian, the next important time period for the formation of the coal deposits was the early Carboniferous. As you all are aware that this name Carboniferous has been given on the basis of extensive coal deposits. So now in the early Carboniferous, important and economically viable coal seams were formed. So the mining of the coal, which is done from the economically viable coal seams, they started forming during the early Carboniferous. This was a very, very important time period. Now, the late Carboniferous time period, late Carboniferous period, it is also known as bituminous coal period. Bituminous coal period, because by the late Carboniferous there were growth of rich forests like the lepidodendrons and sigillaria. Okay, they are two important uh, trees of the late Carboniferous time period. What are their names? Rich forests with trees. Very common example, you should remember these names: lepidodendrons and sigillaria. These are two important trees of the late Carboniferous, and they were the ones which gave rise to the bituminous coal because they were richer in the carbon percentage. Now, the Permian, another important period for the coals. Here, the coals have been predominantly formed from gymnosperms. And here, the coal seams, they were formed predominantly from gymnosperms. A very common example, you should remember this name, chordates. So, the Permian coal seams, they were the result of gymnosperm. Now, the Jurassic and early Cretaceous, here again gymnosperms, and those important ones were ginkgophytes and cycadophytes and conifers. Jurassic and early Cretaceous periods, they had these gymnosperms which were ginkgophytes, then cycadophytes, and then conifers, the conifer trees. So these were the important gymnosperms which were the principal coal forming plant communities. And between the early and late Cretaceous, most of the coal deposits were formed by the angiosperms because this was a time period where rapid development of angiosperms took place. Okay. Now, compared to the Carboniferous flora, the swampy plants of Mesozoic and Cenozoic, they are much more diverse and more specialized. So what I'm trying to say is that the uh, plant community during the Carboniferous, it was not that diversified. It was, though it was very more, very high in abundance, but the number of new species were not evolved. That is why they were less diverse. While during the Mesozoic and the Cenozoic, these swampy areas, they have been inhabited by more diversified plant communities, because you can see here that how the land plants, they rapidly spread, then the forests were formed with trees, and then further gymnosperms, the complex gymnosperms and then angiosperms, they got evolved. So it is very obvious that the uh, Carboniferous flora was less diverse than the Cenozoic flora. Okay, so if you see over here, you can yourself see in this diagram that during the from Devonian to Permian, the land plant communities were slowly evolving, and then post Permian, you can see that there was rapid spread and development of these plants. Of course, they gave rise to the complex gymnosperms. So if you see here carefully in the Jurassic, you can see the Ginkgopsida, Psychopsida, all these were the uh, rapidly growing plant communities. In Cretaceous, you can see this coniferopsida or conifers, pine trees, pinopsida. So this tells us that they were the important plant forming communities during the Mesozoic. While during the Cenozoic, because you can see here from early to late Cretaceous, between this time period, there was a rapid evolution of angiosperms. And during the Cenozoic, angiosperms became the most important plant communities. Okay. So this is how with the geological time, the coal seams started getting thicker. They became true coal seams from the thin coaly layers. Okay. So this is another important thing which you should know, that the true coal seam formation took place only after the middle and late Devonian, when the plants they spread over the land, the continents rapidly, because it was that time period when since the plants came on the land from getting submerged in the water, they started getting thick stem, thick trunks. Okay, the woody tissues started coming in, and that is why the true coal seam formation started taking place after Devonian. But the Devonian coal seams, they do not have any economic value. You should keep this in mind. So why did this happen during the Devonian? The Devonian period was a time of great tectonic activity wherein the Gondwana and the Umerica, Europe and America, they came together. The continent Laurasia, okay, it was created in the early Devonian by the collision of Laurentia and Baltica. And then slowly the convergence of these two land masses were together. So this was also the time period in the Tropic of Capricorn where now uh, this Hadley and Ferrell cell where they are meeting today. So this area was having lot of droughts, and it was characterized by oxidized iron hematite deposits. Sea levels were high worldwide, and much of the land lay under the shallow sea, so the land wasn't even available for the plants. That is why the land plants started coming only after the Middle Devonian. Okay, so all these tectonic activity and the paleogeography, it played an important role in the development of the land plants and subsequently the uh, coal seams. Now, in the Carboniferous, if you see how these land plants they started to grow, so you can see very important plant communities in the Carboniferous, and a lot of them suddenly started to evolve, and that is why the coal formation of the Carboniferous led to the name Carboniferous period. As I told you that the upper Carboniferous is known as the bituminous coal period. So if you see over here, these trees, Lepidodendrons and Sigillaria, they were the major plant types, the trees which could grow almost 30 meters in height. And if you see this picture over here, what the coal seam which you are seeing over here, this coal seam, this is the trunk of this tree. A whole tree trunk got preserved, and this trunk is the trunk which was found in that coal seam. It was 7 meter in height. The entire trunk was 7 meters. So you can imagine that how this important uh, trees which were of the late Carboniferous period, they led to the formation of the uh, important coal seam. That is why it is called as the bituminous coal period. Now, this is the chordates. It is a gymnosperm And the Permian coal deposits have been formed from the gymnosperm chordates. The trunk of this tree of this gymnosperm was very important source for the formation of the coniferous seams. It had lot of woody tissues in it. In the Mesozoic, the peats started forming from the angiosperm floras. Angiosperm floras. Because post Triassic and Jurassic, you can yourself see that how these angiosperms, they simply radiated. They suddenly started to evolve rapidly.